Shut up and sit down.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys.
We're so glad that you tuned in for our podcast. Pretty excited here at the FAM. Lots of stuff going on.
Oh my gosh, it's been crazy busy.
Yep. One of our big projects is we're putting out a book this year about marriage and ministry.
Yes.
And we are very convinced that while it isn't easy, it is a worthwhile endeavor for a couple especially to pursue.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of families and marriages go through this journey of ministry, trying to figure out how to balance ministry life and marriage life, because both are very demanding vocations, very demanding. And so we've seen where there have been problems along the way, and we've seen, of course, a lot of them work quite well. But we've been doing it now for at least 21 years of full-time ministry.
Yeah, I think it's even more than that. To be honest, we've been married for 27 years, and almost the entirety of our marriage, we have been doing full-time ministry or preparing for ministry.
Right, that's true, right, yeah.
So when we were in college, I mean, that's kind of a cool story and a long story, but we found ourselves at a Baptist college right out of high school. We went for a come and see kind of day, and we... I don't know that we were really convinced at all that this was going to be the place that we would go, but we had a couple things happen to us, locked my keys in the door of the car, or inside the car, and the people were so nice helping us get it out that we thought, my gosh, if people are like this when you're in need, helping you out, this might be a good place to go. And we found ourselves at this Palm Beach Atlantic, it's now university, and we met some basically lifelong friends,
right,
and we kind of nurtured and fostered this initial seed of faith that we'd both been given as children. And as we began to pursue our career in school, ministry was really looking like a real probable kind of path that we were on.
I think what one maybe is that it was our calling. So it was something that we just automatically gravitated towards because the Lord had put that in us from the beginning. But also, I think that it was also a natural expression of the growth of faith that was going on with both of us in this time of college growth and years, whatever was happening there, that it was natural for us to want to share what we were learning. So now, West Palm Beach, the school was in the heart of West Palm Beach, right in downtown. Now, this was in the late 80s, early 90s, and at that point, West Palm Beach was the hood. I mean, it was not a very nice place. Yeah. You have Palm Beach right across the Intercoastal there, where the Kennedys have a house, and you have Worth Avenue, which is basically like Saks Avenue or whatever, Fifth Avenue in New York City. I mean, it's really super nice. But West Palm Beach, downtown West Palm Beach, was filled with crack houses. So you had a lot of prostitution, a lot of drugs, just a lot of trouble there. A very dangerous place. So, and here we are in college there, and our faith is growing, our zeal and excitement for the Lord is growing, and so we had met a friend. We had this...
John Lauderly. Yeah. And John, I don't know if I should say his name, but I just did. I'm fairly confident he's not listening. But John was a very interesting character. He looked a lot older than any of us, although he wasn't terribly old. He just was weathered and seasoned by life. He had made a lot of poor choices, and he would admit to that. In fact, just listening to him talk about his faith journey was very powerful for me. I remember he said that for him, growing up in the biker lifestyle, that he really just hated people, and all he wanted to do was to customize bikes, and he was part of the whole culture of basically all things negative. And when he talks about his conversion story, it wasn't through any particular preaching or any type of kind of audio tape at the time. It was simply reading the scriptures, and he had this moment of just realizing that he hated God's chosen people. He had broken all of the commandments, but he had this compulsion to keep reading the scriptures. And as the way he would articulate it was, I don't know if it was in Matthew and Mark and Luke or in John, but one day I met Jesus. And I've never forgotten that, just how beautiful and powerful that story is of how God can grab someone and change their life in a moment.
I know. It was awesome.
And I think for Linda and I both, like, we both had experiences when we were kids about giving our life to Jesus and wanting to live for Jesus. Now, I don't know that either of us had planned, let's go into full-time ministry.
Right.
But we wanted to give our life to Jesus, and we wanted to live for him. And I think ultimately, even too, growing up the way we did, we knew that no matter what we did in life, we were all called to be ministers in some form and fashion, right?
Well, I think, so in college there, we surrounded ourselves with people who were like-minded like this. We had John, who we hung out with all the time.
Yep.
All the time. It was the three of us always together, and
Yeah.
we had some of our best memories were spent with him. And then we had other friends roommates of ours and just friends we hung out with who now they're still doing ministry full time, still married, still doing, they're preachers and pastors of growing, vibrant churches all over the country. And so these were the people we hung out with that had a heart for ministry. So ministry in some form or fashion just was in us.
Right.
And in those early years, especially with John, who had this incredible conversion experience, he lived in a very different world than we ever experienced. And so he was okay going into these difficult situations like the streets of downtown West Palm Beach. It didn't frighten him. It scared the crud out of me. I was not the person to be in the hood ministering to these people because I was so gullible and naive. But so in those early days, it would be you and John out at night on the streets of downtown West Palm Beach, sharing the gospel, handing out tracts, witnessing to people, just trying to minister to these people living on the street and to the way that you knew. And even I would participate in times. I remember one time we went to the Strip in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And where all the kids would hang out, and of course, you see everything under the sun happening there, and just walking along the street and walking up to teens and to kids and just witnessing, telling them about Jesus. That was what our life was. And I remember, Chris, you said to me one time, I may die on these streets, but you know.
Did I?
Yeah, you basically were telling me you were going to die young. That's not encouraging.
I was super dramatic.
The
thing is, I think for both of us, living that faith so important, falling in love with Jesus so important, just being open to what could be next. And while I think maybe when we both came to that school, we didn't fully know what we were going to do, it wasn't long into that school that I myself had this dramatic kind of almost reversion back to the faith. I had struggled a little bit with some things. Linda started getting excited about the faith, and we were all in at that point. I started majoring in biblical studies and basically would go out with John on a fairly regular basis, and even by myself sometimes, just sharing the faith. We got involved with the church that used to do this kind of street ministry stuff. One of my great heroes at that time was David Wilkerson with the Cross and the Switchblade, and his story of going to New York City and sharing the faith with gang members. And in my mind, I always wanted to kind of model what I was doing after that kind of ministry that was super like tangible, nitty gritty, just right where people were in their brokenness. And it was interesting because in my life, I wanted that, but I also wanted to really please God. And there was this kind of tension between almost like a scrupulosity with this desire to be, a proponent of the mercy of God. So you have this kind of obsessive scrupulosity, like I need to show God and tell him how sincere I am and how much I want to live for him. I'm not going to sin in those ways anymore. And then you would meet people so broken, so down and out and say, God loves you no matter what. Mm-hmm. I couldn't figure out how to get the God loves you part into my life more because I wanted to show him that I was worthy of being a great minister. And what's interesting is I think actually, I said this many years ago, but I think that God calls the most dysfunctional, needy misfits on the planet. I think Adam Bitter and I were talking about this at a Steubenville once, that, God picks these dysfunctional misfits because we just are going to constantly know that we still need him. right? And so whenever you meet someone who does ministry, they're usually probably a wreck outside of their prayer life and dependency on Christ.
Right. Which is a good place to be. Dependency on Christ.
Amen.
But I think from the very beginning, it was clear that we both knew that we had this calling of some sort of ministry. And like you said, maybe it was just the fact that we are Christians and all Christians are meant to be ministers. And so that's kind of where it was. I know I never looked and said, oh, I'm going to be an evangelist or I'm going to be a missionary, even though a missionary kind of was something that was always interesting to me. But I do know that the Lord wanted me to be a support to you in whatever he was calling you to do, Chris. And so I think that, so from the very beginning, we were on the same page. No matter what was there, we knew that working for God was going to be at the core of whatever we did, whatever life choice we made, whatever road we took. Serving God and sharing that love with other people was at the core of whatever we did. And so when we eventually realized we were going to do full-time ministry, you had started kind of tinkering with some songs and music. You'd done music forever and ever, but writing music more, and specifically for the purpose of sharing it. And you had this moment where you realized, this is what I need to do.
Yeah. And
you decided to take the plunge. At this point, so we were fast forward several years, we were married with a couple kids. I was full-time teaching kindergarten at a public school, and really, to me, I was doing that just so that you could finish your degree, your bachelor's degree. And I wanted to be home with my babies. So at that time, it was like this crazy moment where I knew I wanted to be home with my kids. I wanted to be an at-home mom, and my heart was breaking to be there. And at the same time, you felt very called to quit your job, your full-time job, quit it, and go full-time into ministry.
Yeah.
Full force, really give it your all. And that was kind of a crossroads for us. We both were thinking, these two things don't add up. How can we both quit our jobs?
Right. It's interesting because I don't talk about this too much, but I was being invited to go in to speak to the manager of the job I was working at, and I knew that they were going to invite me to not work there anymore. And the reason I knew that was because my heart wasn't in it. All I kept thinking about was this band that I had started, and trying to get gigs, and that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to just be all in. You know, the thing about it, when I think back on my life, I think I realized that I have this personality that it's like I'm all in or I'm not. I'm all out or I'm all in.
That's
and this
for sure.
little, kind of halfway stuff just doesn't work. That's why I get a little irritated when someone says to me, yeah, let's do that. And then it's like, now we have to have like 8 million meetings to make, we already decided, let's just do it.
Well, that's our conflict in our relationship, right? Well, hold on, I have to plan. And you're like, plan what? Let's just do it.
There's got to be that idea of planning and preparing, and I'm thankful for you. But yeah, I'm kind of like, let's just build a deck, let's just whatever. But when it came to ministry, that idea of being all in, I just knew that I couldn't do my job with excellence. So when I walked in for that meeting, I basically said, I don't think I should be here anymore. And I think she agreed with me very fast and said, I think it's time. And what was fascinating is that even before that, the way that God has called, let me just say this is really important, is that sometimes I feel like when it comes to ministry, people think I have to have this huge, gigantic, like blatant call. But it's funny how God can sometimes, call just little bits at a time, a little yes here and a little yes there. And then you start kind of giving more of yourself to him. And then the more you give to him, the more he invites you to come a little bit more. And I can see that even in my life, where I started writing a little bit of music, and I thought, what if I played that song at a church? I'm terrified. Oh my gosh, what if I mess up? What if people don't like my voice? But this is coming from my heart. I write the song. I sing the song. It's the most beautiful experience. Come do a concert. You got to be kidding me. I think I played every song I had ever written. I did the concert. At the end, I felt like the Lord said, this is what I want you to do. Okay, Lord. And I'll play at a few more churches. Let's start a band. Oh my gosh, that'll be crazy. Was the move to Colorado before the band? Is that?
Oh, way before.
Yeah, so I remember we were like, well, let's go follow somebody else's dream. See, this is the other part, is that sometimes people see the way that God's working in someone else's life, doing ministry, and they think, that's what I should do.
Right.
Or I'll join you, and then that way I can be a part of that.
Right. No, I love this point though that you're making, that
Excuse me.
it wasn't this like aha moment of I'm called to make a band. It was a slow build. It grew and developed in you. Your skills grew and developed naturally. God formed it naturally through you. And that, like you said, I think some people think that, I need to find what ministry I'm going to do and then go that direction instead of allowing the ministry to grow naturally. And I think that's where people have conflict sometimes in relationships, is because all of a sudden someone's made a hard right of, this is what I need to do. And it's not something that has grown naturally in the course of their relationship, in the course of their faith life and their regular life. And so for us, I tell you, that time when we decided to both quit our jobs, the stories we have from that
I know.
are endless.
I think sometimes we almost were wanting people to try and radically trust God for something terrifying almost, because we had seen how God had been so faithful to us. And it was almost like, I don't know if you realize just how good our God is. Like, I want to invite you to
I don't know if we necessarily had that kind of confidence. It was scary at first.
It was scary. That's what I'm saying, is that at first it was terrifying. It was very scary. But after you do it and you realize just how much God wants to bless.
To me, it's that story of that story of David. God delivered me from the lions and the bears. That's how I knew He was going to deliver me from Goliath. That's totally been our life. That I can think of the difficulties that we walk through now. We know that God's going to take care of us, even though we definitely can shake in our boots still. But we know that God's going to take care of us because we've seen Him take care of us so long ago. We didn't lose our car. We thought for sure we would lose our car to the bank because how would we possibly make payments? We thought we'd lose our house because we have no money coming in. How are we possibly going to make mortgage payments? And yet God provided over and over again, literally toilet paper showing up on our doorstep in bags of groceries, praying for money to show up in the mail, and $20 would show up, and I'd go and find a week's worth of groceries on $20.
Yeah. That
the Lord provided. He showed me how to shop. The Lord provided for our bills. He managed for us. Yeah, our credit took a massive nosedive. That number went all the way down. But we survived, because ultimately God doesn't care about credit reports. He doesn't care about how good we look to a bank. He cares about our faith. He cares about the journey we're on, and He wants us to live this life of faith fully. And to do that, it's exciting, scary, but exciting.
This idea of fully living your faith, we keep coming back to that, but I love this idea of all in, because the thing is that as I've thought about this, there was something so clear to us in those early years at college, is that we knew that God had called us together, and we also knew that we were wide open, like, God, whatever you want. So there was this complete openness and this desire to be all in for whatever. And I don't know where it was, but somewhere along the line we realized, well, it's okay to make a mistake, because we can always back up and find the new path. Now, that's been a principle we've been soaking in a lot as of late, the freedom to fail. That might be a different podcast, but the truth is, this idea of all in, though, it all came from this real kind of drive of giving, like, how much of my life, how much of our life can we give to God, and what would happen if?
Right. Well, that's our whole position on contraception, even before we became Catholic. Our whole journey of figuring out what God had, His desire for us, for our fertility and for our family life. Was that whole idea of, what can I give God? How much am I willing to trust Him for? So that's a whole other podcast also. But that's it. We just extreme. Again, we come back to, when it comes to, like, we want to have this book is coming out this fall, on marriage and ministry, how to have one without killing the other or ruining the other. We don't have the title quite yet, but it really starts with this point right here, that we are all in together. It's been a journey that we have made together, even though the way it has been expressed for the vast majority of our marriage has been you solely doing ministry out there in the trenches. You're out working, you're the one traveling, you're the one speaking, you're the one singing, you're the one writing. I'm the one changing diapers, I'm the one cleaning house. But I am the support. I am the spine to the back, that I am keeping the strength here while you're out doing what God's called you to do. But it doesn't diminish what God's called me to do, and that we've been on the same page with this together. So in a lot of cases, in marriages and ministries, you have primarily one person doing the majority of the ministering and the other not, but yet you have to look at it as a joint effort. It
Right.
has to be perceived
Absolutely.
as a joint effort, that the two of you are together in this ministry,
Yes.
even though your roles look very different. And I get, on a regular basis, I get beautiful emails from people who have had you in. They'll often write me an email saying, thank you so much for lending us your husband this weekend. And I think that's I appreciate that. That's great. I don't need those emails because I know I'm pretty confident in the call I have. I know exactly what God has called me to do here. Even though at this point of our life, as our children grow, that role is changing
Oh, yeah.
dramatically. And that takes a whole nother, as a marriage, for us to figure things out, how it's going to look for us as a marriage with my roles changing even now. But
Yeah.
that's where it starts, all in together.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because marriage and ministry can be an amazing journey together, but it can also be a nightmare. And this is the thing, is that I think what happens a lot of times is that if a couple says to us something like, hey, we were thinking about doing some ministry things together. What do you think of that? My first response would be, how awesome, like wonderful. Let's talk about that. But if you can see that one is not a go and the other is super passionate about it, I already know right from the beginning it's going to be a train wreck. And here's the reason, is that while Linda wasn't on stage speaking, singing, necessarily writing books, she certainly was correcting all of them, I'll tell you that right now. But the thing is that I never came home and there was never resentment that I was doing ministry. Like, we knew this was what we were doing. And I always knew that it was we doing it. It wasn't me doing it. It was us.
Right, and there are so many times, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's good.
I have so many memories when the kids were young, kneeling beside their bed in tears or in frustration because I have kids who are sick. I'm alone, and you're off working and traveling, but never, like you said, it would be hard and it would be difficult, whatever, but never was there resentment. Never was there a jealousy and envy of why are you doing that and I'm not doing this. That this role of me kneeling beside my sick kid's bed in the middle of the night all alone was me doing ministry.
Right.
It was me involved in ministry.
Why are you...
Because it's emotional, honey.
It is. That's beautiful. It is doing ministry, and I think sometimes people want to minimize that. It's easy to say, oh, look at that song or that book or that talk, and what people don't realize is that they're only seeing just part of me. I think what's so awesome for me is that as we've grown together in our relationship with Christ, our relationship with one another, our ministry and how it's grown has been very beautiful. And I think when they see us together, it's far more of a picture of who I really am than ever before.
I mean, you're definitely more organized when I'm with you.
That is true, actually. It's another thing, though, to speak about the tensions. And while we didn't struggle with that, many people I know did. I remember even with us when we did the band, that when somebody would say, oh, I want to be in the band, we could understand why. There was a lot of cool things about being in a band. But if that spouse was not all in, we knew that there would be more problems than there would be positive. Because the thing about it is that when you decide to enter into ministry, there is a spiritual dimension that people don't talk about a lot, but there's a lot of attacks that will come, and the enemy knows exactly how to come and attack your family, because if he can destroy your family, then he wins.
Right.
Like,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
it. And so ultimately, not to be weird about it, but God doesn't need necessarily me to speak. I need to be a great husband, because there is no other husband for you.
Right.
It's me. That's my role. That's my first and most important vocation, to be a great husband and to be a great father to those kids that we have together. Because that works, by the grace of God, I can go out and minister to other people from this place. It's like a fountain, It's like a refreshing fountain. So I come home, I get to be refreshed, I get to be renewed, I get to be reminded who I am, what my purpose is, and then I get to go out and from that overflow the gifts of kind of the fountain. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Not really terribly applicable, but kind of. The thing about it is that if you have a couple that is struggling to decide, should we do this, I don't believe that you can keep going unless there's at least a willingness to say, let's see what happens, or I'm 100% in, I support you, I'd rather be behind the scenes.
Right.
And that's the problem. I think sometimes somebody has this huge conviction. And like I said, it might be a little of this, a little of that, a little of this, a little of that, until one day maybe it's over here. But it doesn't mean, oh, I think God's calling me. Now I'll be a public speaker before thousands of people. That's really not how it happens.
Right.
The other like little thought that I have here to encourage my brothers and my sisters with is that, you know, just because you start doing public ministry doesn't mean that you're perfect. Let's just make sure that's in your brain. Because people, there can be a pride element, if you're not careful, that can be even more catastrophic, to be honest.
Right.
And so ultimately, the constant call to be resting in your need for Christ, I think that's very important. You know, I have a friend of mine who said that he could just look at his travel schedule and know when his kids were going to get sick, because inevitably the enemy would come and attack, you know, when he was trying to do good ministry. I can't even tell you how many times I've been traveling and things have just gone completely insane, and you would think, how's that even possible?
Well, I have more than one memory of literally being huge pregnant, which happened quite a bit in the years of travel, but huge pregnant in my backyard, filling bags with sand out of the sandbox in order to create sandbags, because of course we couldn't go out and buy sandbags, and to put around our doors because a tropical storm or a hurricane was heading right our way, and you were off, you know, singing about Jesus.
I do remember one time I was in Oklahoma and I got a call that you had fallen down and you had broken a rib. That you thought, you remember that?
Yeah, and was I pregnant? No, I don't think I was pregnant, but I was holding the baby when I fell. Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Oh, we've had some pretty tragic phone calls through the years.
Yeah. The thing about it is, though, with all of the difficulty, honestly, it has been our call.
It has been.
We have never said, I wish we would have done something different.
I can't imagine doing something different.
I can't either.
I know, I can't. Oftentimes I've tried to imagine what it would look like to have a regular salary. I do.
Sorry.
I do think it would be, I mean, there's something nice. I had many Sundays of having dinner alone, knowing that everybody's having Sunday dinners. Sunday meals are happening all over the world with their family, and I'm sitting there eating oranges and popcorn with my kids at the table because, one, we didn't have money to buy anything else, and two, nobody invited me over.
Yeah.
Because no one invites the mother when she's home alone. They always, Chris, if I'm traveling and Chris is home alone with the kids, the invitations abound. They abound. Oh, how are you going to handle being alone with the kids?
I know, for real. How would I handle? But the thing is that, Linda, you are, like, in people's brains, they think that's one calm, cool, collected, strong woman, you know, which you are.
Right.
But that doesn't replace the fact that now and then you could use the encouragement. Here's our encouragement for you. If you're praying and thinking, I might want to do ministry, then hallelujah. Praise God. Don't freak out about it, right? This is a good call. Be yourself. Don't try to be like another ministry. Make sure it's an organic growth. Don't try to be somewhere that took somebody 20 years. Relax, enjoy the journey, and be all in. And if you do those three simple things, I think you're going to find that it's an amazing ride, and you won't believe all the stuff that God can do if you just say yes. So look for the book. It's coming out soon on marriage and ministry. Please keep us in prayer. Let people know about our podcast and vlogs. We're doing all we can to be a blessing to you. God bless you. Catholic Fam is a ministry for you. And if there's anything we can do that you can think of, let us know. See you next time.
Bye.